It's energy medicine. So it's based on Chinese medicine, the way that I approach it. So the human body has hundreds of acupuncture points on it. And each of those acupuncture points is basically like a light switch. It's on or it's off. It's a little circuit. And you have hundreds of little circuits and you have one big circuit. So if I plug something to every socket in the building, I might blow the main circuit in the box. People can do the same thing. If they have more stress on their nervous system than they can handle, they blow the main circuit. So that's one of the first things I look for is through muscle testing, where I'm going to pull on someone's arm gently, poke on acupuncture points, and look to see what circuits are turned on or turned off. Well, then we can feed information into those circuits, and I can get information back, and it helps me make decisions. So when people first see what I do, it seems a little odd, but once they experience it and go through the process, and I talk them through what I'm finding and what's going on, it always makes sense to people. And it's just I call it functional physiology. So we're trying to put things back together, and just guessing or basing my decisions on symptoms is inadequate. It really is kind of the lowest level way to practice. And then we move into, say, blood testing, urine testing, and those other forms. That's all good for certain ways of testing. So it's a very linear approach. It gives us a certain amount of information to look at. It's very hard to see the broad picture when we're just using that type of information. But there are times when it's very useful. But it's best used to manage disease processes. That's what blood testing is really good at, unless you do a very specialized form. But we won't go into that aspect. But what I have found that it is energy medicine testing gives me information that I'm never going to get any other way. But by doing what I'm doing doesn't just give me information. It just helps me make decisions. So I have information in my head and experiences over the last 22 years. And there are a lot of different directions we can go. So that it's just a guide or a tool to help us get there. We all agree that there's a certain level of vitality and health. We all agree you're healthy. You really don't need anything. And then over here, where the blood test is way off, and something is, we can call it a disease because you have so much happening. But then we have this big chunk in the middle where you're continuing to go from doctor to doctor to doctor, and because you have a loose-knit set of symptoms that don't seem to add up for any one specialist, and that's where this type of work shines, where I can go in and figure out what's happening in the gray area and start to put the systems back together so that it all starts to function. You always have to remember that in the Chinese medicine model, all of your internal organs are like a big battery. They hold an electrical charge. And when they're charged up and wired together, we're nice and vital. And when our batteries start to go dead, that's when we exit the vessel. And so my goal is always to, as a baseline, to figure out which organ is under the most stress because it's pulling energy out of the rest of them. Patch that up, get the energy moving. So now we have energy flow, but maybe it's at a low level. So we have to give some time and put some effort into building the vitality up. So this is a process I use no matter what the patient comes in with, whether it's heart disease, diabetes, female issues, you name it. This is the basic process that I use to help guide me through the decision-making process. Start from the very beginning by just being right up front about that. I know you came in because you had symptoms. We're going to change the symptoms as quickly as we can. But the symptoms are created because you have underlying imbalances making that happen. So we're going to do them both at the same time. And if you're in a big hurry and it's got to happen yesterday, you've come to the wrong place because we're going to dig underneath and we're going to start to work on that from day one. And then again, once I provide some basic balance, I'll move on to trying to treat symptoms. So typically, even on a first visit, once I go through, maybe I find the heart is their weakest battery. So maybe we figure out they need to go off of a certain food to reduce inflammation, to allow that battery to recharge itself. Maybe they have a hidden infection, a virus, an old cold virus that's been there for 20 years. We find a way to help the body start to deal with that a little bit better. And that all of a sudden, that energy spreads out and we can feel it and we can see the change in the system. From there, I may look at their intake or their paperwork or ask them, what is the symptom that's bothering you the most? What can we do first to try and work on that? And usually people have an answer, and if they don't, I start asking about sleep patterns and energy and stamina and things like that. Things that we can symptoms we can probably make an impact on fairly soon. And if you're not sleeping, it's going to be it's going to be a long haul to try and get your physiology to improve for obvious reasons. You have to sleep to restore yourself. Yeah.